Our two speakers today have been doing this for 5 years. 5 years, unbelievable. That's how long Jason's been here now. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about both Drew and Jason, and then lead it into the discussion here, or not the discussion, but the presentation. Oh, catch my breath. All right, so Drew. Drew has proudly served as Lake Bluff's village administrator since January 1st of 2008. Oh. Wow. Having previously served as village manager of Bannockburn and assistant village administrator in Lamont. He has degrees from William Jewell College, University of Missouri St. Louis, and a certificate from Harvard's Senior Executives in State and Local Governments program. Among his many professional involvements, Drew has served as, or is still currently serving, as board president of the Illinois City-County Management Association Executive Board, secretary of the North Suburban Benefit Cooperative, is board chair of the Joint Public Safety Dispatch Emergency Telephone System Board, vice president of the Government IT Cooperative, is on the Lake County Solid Waste Board of Directors. Unless you think he's a slacker, he also has served as the executive board chair for IRMA, which is the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency. That's Drew. Our friend Jason Wicha. You have your name pronounced all sorts of ways. Yeah. So Wicha. So Jason has served as Lake Forest City Manager since 2019. Prior to joining Lake Forest, Jason spent 5 years as the assistant village manager of the village of Skokie and served as village administrator for the village of Thornton, Illinois for 7 years prior to that. He is active with the Lake County Municipal Conference and currently serves on both the Finance and Managers Committees with the Northwest Municipal Conference. He is also a member of the Metro Managers Board of Directors. Jason received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Skidmore College and a Master of Public Administration from Wayne State University. And he and his wife Jessica and 2 small children and their family are happily settled in Lake Forest. So we are so pleased to have both gentlemen. Thank you for coming. And I would tell you all, on your tables you'll see blue cards. Those blue cards are for questions that you might have. We're not going to pass a microphone afterwards. I already have one question from someone, so fill out that question and we'll send it up here so that we can have them answered. All right, thank you. Gentlemen, if you would come up, please.
Okay, thank you. And before we begin, I'm just going to ask one more time if you guys will join me in thanking Joanna and her team for all the effort that went into putting this on today. It's really a pleasure for Drew and I to be able to do this every single year. We enjoy the opportunity to have all of you here together to hear our story, really because all of you as business owners, as leaders of other community and civic institutions, you contribute so much to the vitality and vibrancy and quality of life in our community. And we recognize that all of you collectively are the best ambassadors and cheerleaders that we have for our 2 communities. And so it's a real pleasure for us to be able to share our story a little bit. So we're going to do that and walk through a presentation. And as Joanna said, upon conclusion of the presentation, Drew is happy to answer all the hardball questions you want to throw his way. So feel free to fill those out. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew and let him get started.
Thank you, Jason. That's well said. I've always thought of you all as ambassadors of the community as well. And we're here to share with you the good news of your respective communities where you work, live, and play. And So we hope you will take this information and share it with your friends and family and be the truth tellers of the community. I guess I'm still reeling over this hotel, that award. That's amazing. That's impressive, isn't it?
It is impressive.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I love about that is, and when I'm sitting at my office up in downtown Lake Bluff, I always see the bikes from this inn, right? They have those cute little bikes with baskets, and those bikes are always in Lake Bluff. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised, Jason, but I love seeing them. And I think what they're doing is they're taking a journey. So I'm going to have you all quickly take a journey with me. So bear with me here. You don't have to close your eyes, but we're going to try to get in a Lake Bluff state of mind. So on the northernmost point of Chicago's prestigious North Shore is a jewel of a village where the soundtrack of life is laughter. It rings out from the children who pedal furiously across the village green on bikes like church bells. It peals from the restaurants and specialty stores that dot the downtown. It is the undercurrent and the shouted greetings of friends and neighbors on the streets or in their backyards. We are friendly, we are laid back, we are family fun, charming, small town. We're Lake Bluff, and we're North Shore living in Lake Bluff style. So are we there? We're all in the state of mind. I can pipe in some Steely Dan or something, I don't know. Everything that I'm going to talk about this morning is from the village's strategic plan. It's kind of the architecture that surrounds all the decision making in Lake Bluff for the Board of Trustees. And the first thing we're going to talk about, Jason and I, is the state of the finances in our respective communities. And the short answer is great shape. That's the good news. One of the best indicators of the financial success of the village is sales tax revenue. Lake Bluff is fortunate to have several car dealerships in town. We have the Chevy Exchange, we have Lake Forest Sports Cars, we have Imperial Motors, and we also have Knaus Auto Park, which actually just added a new vehicle brand that they're selling, the Ineos Grenadier, which is a bespoke 4x4. So run out and grab a couple today. Great facilities, and they are probably 60% of the sales tax revenue I'm showing you here, but over the last decade, it has continued to see immense growth, and Target plays a big role in that as well. And the good news is that, about 11 years ago, the village worked with Target and adopted a sales tax rebate agreement, and that actually comes off the book in 2025, so the village is actually going to realize some more revenue to invest in capital. But the village enjoys this great position, and we maintain a AAA rating, a superior rating from Moody's, and it's just good news to tell.
Great. Well, continuing that theme, a lot of what we'll talk about today is what's coming, which has either recently happened or what's coming in the near future. But everything that is happening in our city is predicated on the strong financial position that we have as a city. And just last year, or early, I guess 2023, the city's AAA bond rating was affirmed. And when I talk about the city's financial position, I always like to emphasize that it hasn't happened by accident. We've been very blessed with current and past elected leadership that think about financial decisions with very long-term time horizons, that are proactive and aggressive in dealing with long-term financial liabilities. We're very fortunate to have a pretty diverse revenue portfolio. We're not overly reliant on just one revenue source, and then that certainly helps us mitigate any risks with our volatility in the economy, allows us stability in providing the exceptional quality of services that our residents and businesses have come to expect. And as you can see on the slide, as I referenced, addressing long-term liabilities, two areas where we've been particularly proactive are in addressing public safety pensions, which many people know is a big problem in the state of Illinois, as well as infrastructure. The City Council about 10 years ago decided to take a completely different approach to funding pensions in comparison to the model that's been used by the state. To use sort of a very simple analogy, I've maybe used it before here, it's sort of akin to starting to save for your retirement in your late 20s and your early 30s versus saving for retirement in your 50s, which is sort of the model that others have used and backloads a lot of payments. So the city, in front-loading and accelerating their pension funding contributions, we've now gotten to a point where in about 1 to 2 years, we're going to be able to flatline our contributions moving forward, and in the process save the taxpayers of the community tens of millions of dollars over the next couple of decades. And then the other sort of long-term liability all of our communities have, and an area we're really happy to talk about, is infrastructure investment. As you can see on the slide there, in the current fiscal year, the city's budget includes about $32 million in capital improvements. over the last 5 years, the city's invested about $85 million in infrastructure within the community, which is a really remarkable number. Importantly, of that number, only about 12 million of that was financed through issuing debt. The city's developed a really strong pay-as-you-go model in order to maintain consistent infrastructure investment and avoiding sort of the peaks and valleys that can come otherwise. We're also very fortunate, and I want to give a shout out to a lot of our staff that they've been very proactive in seeking out grant funding, which helps stretch our dollars and supplements the city's funding. As you can see, almost $20 million in grants have been obtained over the last 5 years, and I want to give a shout out to our elected leadership at both the federal and county levels who are here tonight. They've been wonderful partners and supporters in helping bring some of those tax dollars back to our community, so thank them for that. And then the last point I'll just note, because we love to brag about this too, just last year the city received the third and final award from the Government Finance Officers Association to achieve the Triple Crown Award status. And of the approximately 90,000 units of government that exist throughout the United States, only 321 have achieved that recognition, so we're very proud of that. And an important component of that is not just making fairly bland financial reports available on your website, but developing reports that are much more easily digestible for the average layperson who's not necessarily financially savvy. So if you're ever having trouble sleeping at night and you want some assistance, go to our website. You can find everything you need, but a real credit to our finance staff. They've done a tremendous job with that.
Yeah. And let's be honest, they're still pretty bland. I mean, right? They are.
I could talk about it for hours. But yeah.
No, congratulations on the Triple Crown. Do they award that at Arlington Raceway? Where does one take home that award?
Yeah. Arlington Raceway, what's that?
I don't know. Anyway, okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about real estate, and this is a good news, bad news situation. This slide here, and thanks to Brady Anderson for giving me this data, is not too different than last year's slide, and that is there's an inventory issue. In fact, he told me this morning there's only 13 houses active in Lake Bluff. 13. And I think good news, nobody wants to leave town. Bad news is nobody who wants to get into town. Pricing, as you would imagine, with such a low availability of product, is really high. Some amazing numbers over the last 2 years and the highest price points. And a house moves once it actually goes on the market, and so it's a great time to be in residential. Everything I'm reading in terms of real estate investment is looking at residential as the best market to be in, both multifamily and just single family. So while there's nothing new to share on Block 3 or Stonebridge, who knows what 2024 holds if that runs through as predicted. On the commercial side of real estate, this is, I think, a bit of a land use study gone well. The Village years ago looked at the Waukegan Road corridor and our business park there, and it decided to loosen the reins on regulations to increase tenancy out there by adding more uses as of right for businesses. And so it shows in the numbers. Tenancy is incredibly high, and our industrial park functions as a flex park, so it can be office, it can be light industrial, it can be manufacturing, it can be storage, and because of that, it's full, and which is critical because again, if you look ahead, there's a big reset going on in that arena, and right now our flex is at under 5% in terms of vacancy. That number, industry experts are saying, going to go to 30%, 40%. So it's coming. So I think the Village, again, wise leadership over time, has adjusted our regulatory environment, and we're well positioned moving forward.
Okay, fairly similar story in Lake Forest, and there's a lot of realtors in this room, so nothing we're not telling you, but certainly we've seen the same trends that really are that you see all over the country. Inventory is very low. certainly with interest rates rising too, that are eroding people's purchasing power. Sales volume has definitely lagged behind some of the boom years that we experienced during COVID. The positive for that is that we've seen home values increase. And you can see on the chart there from about fiscal year 20 to 24, the average sales price for a residential property in Lake Forest has gone from about $850,000 to just under $1.2 million. So for those who own property in the community, that's a good news story. For those trying to buy into Lake Forest, it's a bit more challenging. So I know some of our realtor friends will tell you, if you have somewhere to go and you're willing to put your house on the market, it's a great time to do so. So please consider that. In terms of commercial and office space, we continue to monitor what's happening out in the office park with Conway. No question that the office market is in flux right now as we come out of the pandemic. Our office park, on account of having so much attractive Class A office space, is doing better than most any throughout the county. We haven't had a lot of significant departures. We have seen some consolidations from some of our corporate partners out there as they condense their space. But we are seeing, starting this year, a lot of those partners mandating their employees coming back to work. So we can all decide for ourselves what that means for the employees, but it's certainly good for us. As a city, we want to see those buildings filled, and we like those employees going out and frequenting your businesses. So we'll continue to monitor that, in the months and years ahead. But I think it'll still be a couple of years before we truly comprehend what the impact of COVID will have been on the office park.
So I guess I'd say buckle up. The next 5 years in Lake Bluff are going to be, it's going to be a story of coordination. There are a lot of projects that have been in the pipeline for years that all seem to be coming to head in this 5-year window. So the first one is a small one. It'll be a short one, and it's probably the prettiest project in there. The Glen Avenue Footbridge is a beautiful area of Lake Bluff on the east side, and we had a very generous resident donate most of the money necessary to replace this footbridge, and we're going to get a kind of a quasi-custom bridge. It's going to be beautiful with landscaping. It's a really beautiful niche area in the community, and very frequented by folks coming through town. Again, a lot of Lake Foresters, I know. The big one here, the 41176 interchange project, that's been on the books. It's actually been in the IDOT's multi-year program. It's funded. There is utility relocation going on right now, and that project is in phase 2, which they still need to do some work, but I think it's going to happen in the next 5 years. And that's going to have some significant interruptions for all of us. The good news is that the interchange plans is actually under this. It's hard to see, but essentially the footprint is going to look a lot like what it is today, except for it'll have dedicated acceleration and deceleration lanes, and that's the big safety issue with that interchange. And obviously the beautification that'll occur with that will be a game changer. Stormwater. The village has been talking about stormwater for a long time, studied at least 2 years to come up with a funding mechanism and established a stormwater utility last summer. And the village has been digging in, we've done the phase 1, waiting on IDOT's final comments for that. We've started phase 2. There's actually a shot that we can start the deep tunnel project, which is a 6-foot diameter stormwater pipe that's going to go from the viaduct out to Lake Michigan, and it's going to allow us to tie in a lot of neighborhood flooding issues on the west side and east side. Could start as early as next year, depending on if Lake County gets some money, which we think they're going to get. Lake County Stormwater Management Commission has been an exceptional partner for the village with this. They've already pledged $3 million on this $22 million project, and we think they're going to do more. Congressman Schneider's office, thank you, $750,000 for this effort. And we're working with our state to we think they have a sizable contribution for this project, given that it's their asset at the viaduct. So we're hoping they're in the $6 to $7 million range. So like $22 million project will be the single largest public investment the village of Lake Bluff has ever done. So that's coming in the next 5 years as well. Green Bay Road and Bridge, March 2026, the bridge is going to be gone for a year, pretty much. Thank you, Jason, for volunteering Deer Path Road as the alternate route. Not kidding. 137 Deer Path.
checkpoints set up, just to be clear, so drive
You better get those bikes here, people. You're going to need the bikes. But that's coming. But again, that's going to solve a lot of problems. There's stormwater there. Strangely enough, there's stormwater issues to be solved. There's some old utilities we're going to replace. The good news is that the finished product's going to look like a neighborhood road just like it does today. So, and we're going to try to save as many trees as possible. North Green Bay Road pedestrian system. This is another program that is, we believe it's going to be exclusively grant funded. And that's true. Most of these projects are like the 41-176 interchange. That's a $55 million investment. The village has less than 1% in this. The rest is state funded. The stormwater infrastructure, we're probably in for 50% of that project. Green Bay Road and Bridge, that's 75-25 funding. Again, the majority of it coming from the state. And Green Bay Road pedestrian system, again, we think that's going to be 100% grant funded. But that's to build a ped bridge on our northern border at Green Bay, where we go into North Chicago. Strangely enough, there was no pedway there, and we're going to connect up the two communities.
Okay, well, we always like to say in Lake Forest when we're talking about capital, we recognize everyone loves a finished construction project. Nobody likes living through a construction project, but we have a lot coming over the next couple of years, and we're happy to share that. But before we do that, I want to just talk about a couple of recent projects that have been completed. And I'll emphasize again, because it's just a remarkable number for a community of our size. At the end of this fiscal year, over the last 5 years, the city will have invested about $85 million in capital improvements in our community. That's separate and apart from state projects for roads like the Deer Path 41 project. We also have close to $85 million planned for the next 5 years as well. And the city council, our elected leadership, do a really good job of spreading the wealth, if you will, across the variety of asset categories we have between roads, bridges, stormwater, water and sanitary sewer, buildings, ravines, parks. We have a lot of assets to maintain, and the city does a really good job of ensuring that none of those asset categories are neglected. So just looking at a couple of projects that have been completed or nearing completion within the current fiscal year, we continue to invest pretty heavily in ravine repairs. Ravines, and I may have mentioned this last year, are not only a critical component of the aesthetic beauty of our community, but they also serve a critical stormwater management function for us. All stormwater east of Green Bay Road ultimately funnels through our network of ravines and out into Lake Michigan. And certainly over the last 10, 20 years, as we've seen an increase in both the frequency and severity of storms, that's had negative impacts on our network of ravines. So we've been investing heavily in that. You can see a picture there of what a finished ravine stabilization project looks like. The Forest Park Bluff stabilization, that was about a $5 million project that is wrapping up within the next couple of weeks. That is, if you can visualize Forest Park itself, stabilizing the bluff, really the whole length of Forest Park, so the middle section of the beach if you're down at the bottom. Some of you may know we had significant projects to stabilize the north and south portions of the beach. When this project is completed, it'll really shore up the entire stability of that bluff for the next 50 plus years. Deer Path Community Park, for those who are over at Deer Path School, it was impossible it would be impossible to miss this project. It was pretty disruptive, but pleased to say that project was completed in November. It's been wonderful to see all of the students at DPM out there, and for what it's worth, I was over there a few times during winter break before some of the snow had fallen, and just seeing dozens and dozens of kids out there. In late December, early January, it might have been one, anecdotal observation, but that was never happening in prior years. So it's just a wonderful addition to our parks portfolio. It's going to be wonderful for kids and adults in the community as well. And we look forward to seeing that roll out with full, suite of programming sometime this spring. Water main replacement, not real glamorous, but of course really critical. And we do a good job of staying proactive with that. beach crane replacement. If there's any boaters, sailors in the room, that was a source of constant frustration for people who utilize that. Both of the beach cranes were replaced this year. So that was all done within the last fiscal year. As we look forward to the upcoming year, Ahwahnee Road Storm Sewer is the next large stormwater project we have coming. Stormwater was identified probably about 10 years ago as the most critical infrastructure priority we had in the community. At least that was a lot of the feedback we heard from residents in the community. Over the past 4 years, the city's invested almost $12 million in stormwater improvements. This project here is about another $4 million. It's just south of Deer Path Road. We'll be upsizing pipes and funneling that water out towards the golf course and ultimately to the Skokie River. There are 2 bridge projects planned for this summer, so just fair warning in advance, avoid the north portion of Lake Road if you could. The 2 bridges you can see there are both on lake. The Lake Woodbine Bridge being at the intersection of Lake and Woodbine. The McLennan Reed Bridge is just south of Spruce Road as you're up by the cemetery. They're both big projects. They're tricky engineering projects for us because we have to navigate our way around the ravines, and because they're both probably 6-month projects, the idea of doing them in consecutive years would have just created too much disruption for the neighborhood, so better to rip the Band-Aid off, do them both at the same time. So those will be starting this summer. Be forewarned, it's going to be a little messy over there. And then last but not least, I want to highlight the Forest Park boardwalk project, in large part because it's been yet another example of successful public-private partnerships that have been a hallmark of the Lake Forest community. And the city undertook a fundraising campaign in the middle of 2023 to help provide supplements of the city's investment on this. And to date, we're close to our goal of raising over $1.3 million in private dollars to see this project come to fruition, and really in what other community does something like that happen? So it's a testament to the residents and the business and corporate partners we have here in the community that are willing to step up and reinvest in their community as well. We're hopeful that this project will begin in early March and be completed by Memorial Day. And then other big projects on the horizon. We have a lot happening in the Central Business District. I know that's going to be important to everyone, but I'm going to circle back on that in a little bit.
Thank you. So probably not since the 21st Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified by the state of Illinois have folks come out to cheer legislation in Lake Bluff. This gas-powered leaf blower, the seasonal ban that the village board enacted last summer, people show up at meetings and say, I just want to show up and say thanks for that. You've restored the tranquil environs of our community, and thanks for doing that. So it's been funny for me observing that. But that is something I think the board is going to look at after a year, another year with that, and see if they want to dial it up or change that again. But it's been very successful. Another planning and sustainability initiative I'm going to cover is the North Shore Water Reclamation District's overflow basin down at the beachfront. That project started last year and is supposed to reach substantial completion at Memorial Day, and that's good news. And as part of that project, they're also going to have some nice amenities, including permanent bathrooms, 2 outdoor showers, and almost like a park-like area outside of the facility. They're dressing it up, putting new paint and changing the aesthetic of it to make it much less like a sewage pumping station. So that's all good news, and that reservoir basin will be totally subterranean, and then the yacht club will be able to come back and restore their facilities and return things to normalcy at the lake. So everybody's looking forward to that. So Lake Bluff and Lake Forest are Tree City USAs for decades. Lake Bluff is going to dabble in another title, to be a Bird City, Illinois. And I share this with you because it's cute, because to me it reminds me of what, a charming small Lake Bluff. We had this cute older couple come in and said the village should maybe consider doing some more to ensure that we have safe areas for our birds. And it led into this, it became a conversation at the Village's Sustainability Committee. And ultimately, there's an application that's been submitted, and we'll see if we end up getting it. I suspect we will, because it was, oddly enough, we had all the regulations necessary already on the books. So it's kind of cute. But again, I think it's a good example of how small town works and getting things moving. It still can happen, but also showing how important the natural environs are to the village. Choose Lake Bluff update, that's code for historic preservation. In Lake Bluff, unlike most communities, Lake Bluff does historic preservation by incentive. And so all carrots, no sticks, and it's working surprisingly well. The village just instituted a couple of new incentives that are pretty important, actually. You get a waiver for your building permit fees if you're a landmark, which is substantial. You can also get access to zoning relief, different standards, so your rules that you go by in terms of getting additional floor area or doing a zoning relief to get a setback, you get a different set of rules. And the third area is that you can actually get a property tax. Your portion of the Lake Bluff Village tax, you can get relief on that. So these incentives are having the village board just on Monday night approved 2 additional landmarks, and so it's already making an impact. So that's working very well. Speaking of working well, the village 2 years ago started a commercial franchise with the goal of reducing costs for our businesses and our business community, as well as increasing recycling. And this time last year, it was static. When we started that program, the village had 30% of its businesses participating in recycling. That's up to 40% in a year. So that's great news. So congratulations to you all for participating, and we hope that keeps growing. Ultimately, that's to help reduce waste and increase diversion from landfills. So keeping our fingers crossed that keeps moving in the same direction. And the thing I want to spend, probably the premier thing for you all to listen to this morning from Lake Bluff's perspective is the village's update with its comprehensive land use plan. As Jason said earlier, none of this happens by accident. Years of planning goes into most of these things that make our communities great. Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that comes out of the strategic plan that has linkages to the village's land use plan is just this. The village strategic plan for the last several years has said we need to figure out housing in Lake Bluff. We need to understand our housing typologies and try to find a way to increase our diversification. Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, we all do detached single-family housing extremely well, very well. But we have difficulty in having different housing product types for people in different parts and different times in their lives. If you look at Lake Bluff, 99% of Lake Bluff's residentially zoned property is only for single-family homes. Probably not a shocker, but that's pretty high, and that's actually really common throughout the United States. Another way to show this graphically is little blue area. That's where you can put multifamily in Lake Bluff. Not a big area, right? Really tiny. So not terrible, but Lake Bluff community is telling the leadership, we want more housing types. So it's not an easy process, and this is true throughout the United States. There's a big shift in the demographics of our country and our community. Already Lake Bluff is very close to having 20% of our population over the age of 65. And they don't want to stay in houses that are big, and they want to take care of a lot of properties, take care of a large property. So Lake Bluff is looking at this issue intently, and it's happening right now. In fact, there's an important meeting coming in March, I believe, 7th. Yeah. Check, we'll tell you how to connect later, but it's a critical issue in Lake Bluff, and it's probably the most important issue that this village has studied in decades. And when I'm talking about this is what they call missing middle housing, and it's really, again, detached single family and these mid-rise, high-rise, higher density product. I think in Lake Bluff, we're talking about in this low end of the spectrum here, duplexes, condos, apartments, townhouses. That's what I think is probably going to hit the sweet spot in Lake Bluff, but this is a nationwide issue, and Lake Bluff is studying it. Again, this is, we know these people in our community. Everybody comes to Village Hall and said, hey, if you had a condo project in Lake Bluff, it would sell out in 20 minutes. And everybody knows that. We just try to find a way to make it work Lake Bluff style. Like the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit, the village has authorized this type of product in town already through regulations. Nobody's done it yet. So got to figure it out. And what's most important in Lake Bluff is the scale issue. We've heard about that with Block 3. You know, it can't be too big, it can't be overpowering. So scale, scale, scale. And some of this product that's out there, it can be designed really well to look like another single-family home, and nobody will know the difference. So tough issue, but Lake Bluff is studying it. Stay tuned.
Okay, well, it's also a busy year for the city in terms of long-term planning initiatives, and as Drew said, the city, similar to Lake Bluff, the city of Lake Forest takes a lot of pride in being thoughtful in its long-term planning and using those final, results from planning processes to guide future decisions. So later this winter, leading into the spring and all the way up into summer, the city will be working on an update to its strategic plan. That's really an opportunity for us as a community to talk about what our values and priorities are, and to use, again, the goals that will be established through that to guide future decision making, whether it's policy decisions, resource allocation. That will be a process that has a significant amount of public engagement incorporated into that. So be on the lookout over the next couple of months so we can find opportunities to hear from you. The Central Business District, as I mentioned, is an important area of focus for us over the next couple of years. Sort of driving the need for the discussion is a good story to tell. We received significant grant funding and are planning for the spring into summer of 25 significant infrastructure improvements along Deer Path Road, really from Oakwood going east to western. So landscape, streetscape, hardscape improvements, and recognizing that that is going to be very disruptive. The idea to try to minimize the amount of times you are creating disruption in the community. City Council has authorized design work to see if similar streetscape enhancements can be incorporated into the project, looking at Bank Lane, specifically from right outside here at the Deer Path Inn at Illinois, going all the way north to Wisconsin, where Hometown Juice and Coffee is, again, running right through the heart of Market Square. So we're going to be looking at, again, giving a little bit of a facelift to that area. I think every couple of decades it's important to make those investments and just spruce up the aesthetic appearance of the business district. As part of that, we're also engaging in a pretty significant infrastructure analysis to know whether it's underground infrastructure, looking at bumping out sidewalks, other things that can be done to make some of these corridors more pedestrian friendly. What that looks like will be determined probably over the next year, but just planting the seed that summer of 2025 will be very busy within the business district. This year we'll also be wrapping up updates to our comprehensive plan. We've gone through various chapters to date. The last one left is housing. Drew, I think, spoke very eloquently about it. We will be looking at our existing inventory and to try to understand if there are gaps in that inventory. Really a credit to past city councils. We had identified, I think going back 10 years ago, a significant gap in multifamily housing that, in particular, that was creating challenges for what we had heard at the time, older Lake Forest residents who wanted to downsize, no longer wanted to maintain the large single-family home, but wanted to remain in the community, had been here for decades. Lake Forest was their home, and there wasn't a lot of options for them. So we've had a lot of success with the Kilmscott Park development over on Amberley. There's a multifamily building, a second building that's under construction now. So we've made a lot of progress there. Take stock of where we're at, and if there's anything else we need to look at. I just referenced Amberley, but I'll acknowledge it again. That building is nearing completion, or I'm getting a look from our community development director. It's done. So thank you, Kathy. In addition, there are some single-family homes that are being developed in the Oak Knoll subdivision over on the west side of town. Beyond that, I think everybody knows we're a largely built-out community, but there are a few areas out west where we'll continue to evaluate the possibility of looking at additional residential development. Just keeping everyone updated, although it's hard to miss it if you've been over there. The hospital is very busy with construction. The parking garage that began, I think, last year is nearing completion. In fact, I think it'll be open for use within the next 2 months. That's adding close to 1,000 parking spaces at the hospital, which is certainly needed, and kudos to them, not only for getting it done so quickly and thoughtfully, but the way I think architecturally it fits in with the rest of the campus. They did a really remarkable job. And they have also broke ground and are underway on the expansion of the hospital, adding 2 new pavilions on the southern end of the property, which will add, I think, around 90 beds to the hospital when it's completed. Ellowa Farm, the city council approved changes to the special use permit governing that property just a few months ago, and I like to highlight it because I think it's going to be a remarkable addition to the community. Our former mayor used to always say Lake Forest is a community made up of many unique treasures. Certainly Ellowa Farm is one of them. As part of their new model, they will be expanding dining service there, both in-person dining and takeout service. A daytime cafe will be opening over there for people who may be walking through the forest preserve there. They are bringing back some animals too, so if you like baby goats, they are pretty cute. Feel free to stop by Ellowa, but really excited to see that the next chapter of Ellowa. And then lastly, I'll just note a couple additional restaurants coming into town. Everyone always likes to hear what's happening with restaurants. Sophia Steak, which is of course already here, is expanding their space to add private dining. So the rest of you will have to tell me how that looks and how it goes, but we're really excited to see how successful that has been. They're doing very well and are obviously continuing to invest in the community here. Tocco, which is an Italian restaurant, they have a location currently in Winnetka, are opening a second location here in Lake Forest, next to Duffer's Pub. If you can visualize that on Western, construction is underway, and we're hopeful to have them open by early summer, maybe June, July-ish, and they'll be utilizing the courtyard in there for some outdoor dining as well. And then Once Upon a Bagel, we're moving in shortly on Deer Path, where the old take-home pizza place was. So excited to welcome them as well. And then last, I'm just gonna, I don't even see her. Oh, I was gonna give a plug to our communications manager, who is always thinking about ways we can connect with the community and help share our story. We want to be able to make sure you're informed as to what's happening, but we also want to make sure we have the chance to hear from you. And we have a lot of tools and platforms available. So if you're unfamiliar with any of these, I encourage you to check them out, whether they are your more standard website and social media, to our Lake Forest Love blog, which has really done a remarkable job of telling unique stories about residents, individuals, businesses in our community that all contribute to making it such a special place. And of course, our app, where you can conduct really any and all business you would ever need to with the city without needing to come to any of our buildings. We have a lot of tools out there. We want to be able to continue and have conversations with you, so please take advantage of those.
We're running out of time, so same. Yeah, no, it's.
Well said.
Thank you so much, everybody. We enjoyed it. We're happy to join us rounding up the questions.
If you have a question. All right. May I borrow my
Yeah,
phone?
of course.
Okay. So I haven't gone through these yet, but I'll take the top one on the list here. We have the question, any chance of improving cell service in town? Only disappointing issue here.
That's Jason's.
Only.
That is ours. I'll admit that, and I can only say we share in those frustrations. We know it's an issue. The city has authorized the cell service providers the ability to install the smaller boxes throughout neighborhoods, so it is not an issue of city approvals being required. At this point in time, a lot of the cell service providers have not been willing to invest in those infrastructure upgrades. We continue to have those conversations. We know it's an issue. We're doing what we can, but we're pretty limited in our ability to force them to make those needed investments.
All right, this one is, here we go. Will there be any discussion on repairing or replacing the railroad bridges above Scranton Avenue next to the new pedestrian bridge? And if so, when?
In about 20 years. we were out there, was it 2 summers ago? Yeah. We met with Union Pacific Railroad, Metra, and Illinois Department of Transportation. That is a node where all these modes of transportation come together. But that railroad bridge that looks a little suspect is actually structurally sound. They built it over a century ago for twice the loads that it's carrying. But they're looking to replace that bridge and probably Lake Forest Bridge in the next 20 years. So there'll be a phase 1 starting at some point looking at that. But it's coming, but not anytime soon.
How many senior and affordable housing units are intended to be built in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, or were built and intended to be built in 22, 23, and planned for 24 and beyond?
Sure, I can jump in first and say that the City Council approved last year both granting the approvals and providing financial contributions to construct 12 affordable senior cottages on the west side of town, just west of the Telegraph train station. The project has been slightly delayed because costs came in higher than expected, but the city is still firmly committed to seeing that project through and hope to see progress on that early this calendar year. And for those that are familiar, the city, probably several decades ago now, constructed 5 similar senior cottages just north of the Telegraph train station. They've been incredibly successful, very popular. We know the demand is there in the community, so we're hopeful to see construction begin on those additional 12 units sometime this year.
And I would say nothing imminent in Lake Bluff. Kind of gets back to the housing conversation that we're having right now. Lake Bluff has struggled with that issue. Years ago, the village examined on some 10 acres the village owned just south of 176 west of Green Bay Road, did an RFP looking to maybe do a senior housing project there. Ultimately chose not to do it. That site's still owned by the village. It's a possibility. It's one of the sites that the village's missing middle housing consultant is looking at. So it's a possibility, but nothing imminent. In fact, let me, if I may. So one thing is Lake Forest has been successful, and Lake Bluff we've had conversations with Lake Forest about piggybacking on that as an investor perhaps and opening the door for Lake Bluff residents as part of that program.
Drew, here, I'll give this one to you first. Do we have a plan if we start getting migrants sent to the 2 towns?
Yes, and it starts with, and I believe you guys just approved the same ordinance. A lot of communities have approved similar regulation, just setting up a process by which if buses are going to show up in our communities, there's a process that allows us to prepare and make plans. And frankly, it serves as a deterrent because most of these busing agencies that are showing up aren't having any conversations with anybody. They're just showing up. But we have similar regulations in place that set up a process. And then most of these end up, every bus that shows up in town or however folks arrive here, people have to get to where the services they need are geographically. And that's not in Lake Forest and it's not in Lake Bluff. It's in the city of Chicago. And the city and the state are setting up facilities there. They have reception centers for them. So all of our plans work to get those folks where they need to be and where they can be taken care of.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in to add on that, but to also note the City of Lake Forest did not actually approve an ordinance. It was something looked at and considered by the City Council. One of the challenges that we had to consider is that we have a large number of buses that are operating, driving people to and from our train stations every single day, corporate partners out at Conway Park, the hospital, schools, and there were legal complications of trying to carve out all these different exemptions with the exception of perhaps migrant buses. But really, to Drew's point, I think more importantly is understanding sort of the operational response as to how we would address a bus that may arrive in the community. We have not had one come to Lake Forest to date. But I can just say, without going into all the logistical details, our public safety staff have put a lot of thought into this and are well prepared to deal with a variety of different hypothetical scenarios. And just emphasizing Drew's point, all of our plans are centered around ensuring that potential migrants who are coming are able to be transported to areas where they can receive access to the services and care that they need. We don't have the capacity or infrastructure to provide that here in our community, so getting them to those facilities in Chicago is of critical importance, and we certainly have plans and are prepared to do that if the situation presents itself.
And the very last question is, Jason and Drew, when are you two hitting the comedy circuit? And who gets top billing?
Well, we know the answer to that one, but no, we have the second show coming later this evening. So this was just the opening act, and we'll be doing it again.
Now I'm going to let it go. I've been holding back the joke about would you have it? You had the beach. You guys, you put in the boat with the cranes, the beach cranes. I was just like, I was waiting for you to say, please don't. If Drew, if you keep swimming at Lake Bluff Beach, we're going to have to put a crane in for you. That's what I thought you.
Well, maybe we'll end it there. Yeah, I don't know if I can top that one, but I will say again on behalf of Drew and myself, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thanks, Joanna, for giving us the opportunity, and thanks again for all that you do to help make our community such special places.
Yeah. And to add to their thanks, thank you all for coming today. Thank you for being a partner with the Chamber of Commerce and with our two towns. We're just all so grateful and proud of all of this and just the energy in this room. So thank you for coming, and have a wonderful 2024.
Thank you.